There we go. Laura, Brannan, thank you so much for joining. Producer at Motherwell FC. So I've got one question for you. Did you always know that you wanted to be a video producer for a football team?
I knew I always wanted to work in football, firstly. When I was at school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to work in football because that was my passion. And my mentality was, why would you want to work in anything that's not your passion? If this is going to be my life, I may as well get paid to do what I enjoy. So that's always kind of been my philosophy since I was about 10 years old. I used to tell teachers that I wanted to get paid to watch football. I got laughed out the room quite often, and I thought, well, all right, I'll try and work it out for myself. I went through different scenarios. I thought, could I be a dietitian? Could I try and be like a physio? I basically thought of the different roles across a football club and thought, what do I have the ability to do? I'm not very good with science, so that kind of ruled out physiotherapy quite early on. And I've always been quite good at the creative side of things, more so writing growing up. So I decided to focus on that and thought, right, I'll try and get into the media side of things. So it all kind of grew from there. I studied journalism at uni and went into being a journalist first and foremost in my career. Didn't really enjoy that side of things. And just through experience, learned that production was a STEM off of that in the media industry, and decided to pursue that. And so far, I'm enjoying it. It's good. I'm winging my way through life. I'm not going to lie. I'm 34 years old. Still don't know what I want to do with myself, but I've been working in the Scottish football for over a decade now. So I think I'm doing okay so far.
Oh my God, totally. I love that philosophy of if it's gonna be my life, I need to do something that lights me up from inside. That's what I always say. I just love that. So journalism and then into production, how did that transition sort of happen? And how much did journalism train you in terms of technical skills? Did you already have a sense of camera
Well, to be honest, no. And I will show my age here, but I was at uni in 2005 till 2009. And the course I did was at Cali. And you've probably heard of the course, the journalism course. And right now, nowadays, it's got a great reputation for producing journalists that are ready to go. It's like hit the road running. When I was there, we were one of the first years involved in the course. They didn't really know what they were doing at the time. We didn't have a clue. And all the kind of the equipment and the course structure was very basic. Everyone was learning on their feet, and we didn't really learn the skills that you would nowadays. So just to kind of give you a brief background of my career, when I graduated, after doing a wee bit of unpaid voluntary work, working for a local newspaper covering St Mirren games, I then got a job with Celtic, and I was working for their club magazine at the time, which then stemmed into their TV channel. So I learned an awful lot of production from that job. I was there for 4 years. So I had the writing side of things, which was, as I was saying, always sort of my background, and then got into the kind of TV side of things and learned that. When I left Celtic, I started working for STV and did stuff in the sport department there. Again, I was doing written work. I was doing all the online written stuff, but naturally, as you find in this industry, especially Scottish football, you do a lot of multitasking, and you may have one individual role as your job, but you end up doing so many other roles at the same time. And it's so important to have skills across the board because you are expected to pick up slack elsewhere. In turn, you usually learn more skills that way. So when I was at STV, I was down as a digital reporter, doing a lot of online writing, but I was being sent out to press conferences, and I was doing a lot of the practical side of the journalism, asking the questions, organising the cameras for shoots and things like that, deciding how I wanted the packages to look as well, working with the broadcast journalists. When I got a wee bit bored of doing that, myself and one other guy at STV at the time decided to branch out a bit, be a bit more adventurous, and try different approaches to features, more kind of documentary style or more featurey style than just your basic news package that you would see on the 6 o'clock news. That went really well. Change of management meant it didn't go long term, so we got a wee bit frustrated in the end because we couldn't do what we wanted to do. But I really kind of got the taste for production at that point and wanted to push it further. So I ended up being involved with a company down south called Copper 90. They're based in London. They're a YouTube company. And the department I worked in was fan culture. So my job was, I was junior producer at the time, and I was basically in charge of organising shoots around the world covering fan culture, covering the supporters. We didn't have rights to show the actual football games. So the way we got around it was to show the stories behind, like turn the camera off the pitch, round to the stands, onto the supporters, and ask what the story was. You might have seen that the most recent one actually was that the Copper 90 did was on Scotland and the national team and the story from the Euros. So we got involved and told the stories that way. That was during the World Cup in 2018. So that took me around quite a bit. My kind of role was to go to, instead of going to the actual World Cup, I was going to the countries that were involved in the World Cup and showing the story from the perspective of the fans still in the countries. So that was great. That was a great experience. And then after that, I was involved with Motherwell. So I was going to touch on this later for a wee bit of advice, but it's always good to keep your foot in places, like dip your toe in places, and keep contacts even when you're not necessarily working in that role. So for example, when I was down in London, I knew I wasn't going to be down in London forever, and I knew I would be coming back to Scottish football at some point. So I was in a long distance relationship at the time, and I was coming back quite often, maybe every second or third weekend because of that. So on a Saturday afternoon, I would volunteer with Motherwell, and I would film the games on a Saturday. And it just meant that I knew the people at the club, I knew the setup, they knew me as well. And it worked out really well, because when a job came up and my time was up in London, it worked out perfectly. I came back and I slotted in at Motherwell in a role, and ended up taking on the senior producer role, which is what I've been doing for the last 3 and a bit years. So I actually forget the question now, but that was a kind of background of my journey. If that is that any help?
Happy with the answer. That is amazing. How so in your senior producer role at the moment, what does that encompass? In actually, sorry, I have two questions. The first one is what does that encompass in terms of your role at the moment, and the second one is. You mentioned about having to pick up the slack in Scottish football, like that seemed to be sort of particular to Scottish football. Why is that? Well, maybe how, do you know what I mean? Like, what is particular about Scottish football that you would have to be that multi-skilled person?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, a lot of the reason is down to the fact that Scottish football, there's not a lot of money in Scottish football. So straight away, if you look at a club in England, they will have, their media department will have probably about 20 people working for them. I actually wanted to try a wee test with you. I don't know if this will work. Let's see if this works. I'd like to share my screen and show you one of our videos, because I'd like to gauge, it's only a minute, just over a minute long. I'd like to gauge what you guys think in terms of how many people we've got working for us.
Ooh,
and how, like, the roles, the different roles of everyone. If this works, let's give it a go. Let's see if this works. So
you should be able to share.
Hopefully this works. So this is one of our videos from a couple of weeks ago, and it's what we call the story of the match. It's a loose term we use internally. It's just a sort of wee highlights package from a minute and a half that we put out the day after a game. Now, this is all done in-house. There's no external companies involved in this. So I'll show this to you first, and then I know there's not everyone, the students are all on to kind of show raise a hand, but maybe Kim can put into the comments and say how many staff members do you think we work with, just as a number. So I'll play this just now for you.
It's all over at Fir Park. It was an exhilarating night under the floodlights. Some of the referee decisions are at the heart of it.
First half, we weren't good enough. Went out in the second half, we're a different team. Got 2-0 up, in control of the result.
And it's turned in by Tony Watt. How valuable has he been to Graham Alexander? Driving into the box. Goes to go, gets back up. Tony Watt away from the goalkeeper. And a penalty from the spot yet again. Tony Watt scores. Was it ever in doubt? This man cannot stop scoring.
unfortunately, things went against us from a certain point in the game.
Offside flag stays down, and from a really tight angle, it's turned in, and it's game on. Runs into his man, goes to ground, and a penalty is given. Eamon Brophy, denied by Kelly. And is it going to be retaken? It is. Brophy makes no mistake this time. Motherwell's 2-goal lead is crushed, and Liam Kelly is absolutely furious. That foot looked like it was touching the line.
I'm at a loss of words to actually explain it. So I'm gutted for the players because things have been taken out of our control when we're defending our goal.
Okay, hopefully you saw that okay, and that worked.
Yeah, that was great. That worked perfectly.
So shocking referee display. Very true. So I don't know if maybe Kim wants to put in maybe some numbers that the students think, how many people were involved in that.
Brad seemed engaged.
What's that?
I saw Brad getting engaged. You were nodding your head. Come on, give us a number.
I was just laughing. I knew Graham would have said something about that there. Him being yes. Was the question how many people are involved in the media team or in general the football club?
Yeah, well, I mean, same thing, because everyone's involved in doing that video once a week. So same idea, same thing.
Say what, maybe 6, half a dozen or something?
Okay, Brad is 6, Andrew is 3, Kim Beveridge is 7. Anyone else care to venture a guess? Graham? Anyone? Sarah, 4. So Freddie's saying 4. Yep. Sarah is saying 6 or 7. Graham is saying 5.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, I'll tell you who's right. Fred is correct. It's 4 of us.
You can get your prize at the end, Fred.
Yeah, so there's 4 of us involved on a shoot like that, or in general in a team. It's a very small team. If you were to go to a club, as I was saying, in England, you would get easily 4 times the number of people we've got here. So just to kind of break down the different roles we've got. So myself, the senior producer, we've got Grant, who is the head of media, so he oversees everything. We've got Scott, who is he was intern last year. He's now just I don't actually know what his job title is. It's like social media content creator, let's say. And we've got Ali, who is the graphics designer as well. So as you're kind of asking earlier about the different roles in Scotland, because there's not a lot of money in Scottish football, it tends to just be the case that we all sort of have to muck in and multitask. Sometimes that people rip the piss out of it, and that is something that I would kind of give as a wee warning to people. And a lot of students, so it's natural, it's understandable. Students will accept a job that they're asking too much, but they're so desperate to get into the industry. I can understand why people take it, because they're not at a level yet where they can say this is unrealistic. An example of that was, I don't know if you maybe saw, there's a wee bit of chat on Twitter recently. Hibs are looking for a producer, but in reality, it's at least 3 jobs combined into one, and they're asking for 22k. And I know to a student that sounds amazing, and it's a chance to work for a massive club in Scotland. But to someone who in the industry reading that, we were all kind of shocked at just the level of work involved. I mean, we work silly hours as it is, and we've got a very talented team and support network around us. So it's something to just be aware of as a student, to look out for job specs and stuff, because some people in Scottish football push it a wee bit and kind of push the boundaries slightly. In terms of my actual job, though, that video we watched, that's only one part of my job. That's 1 day a week, where, well, one day is obviously the game where we film that, and 1 day is the edit side of things. So in a match day, we've got 2 set cameras and 1 roaming camera, who's sometimes on depending on how the game's going, and then the other person's doing the social media side of things, the tweets and the photos and stuff. But the rest of the week, there's so much more to it. I prep shoots, I film shoots, I edit videos, I manage the content calendar, the diary, I manage the players' media diary as well. So I'm kind of loosely term of player liaison in terms of their media duties. I manage resources in terms of budget, the like the equipment as well. I'm covering all the organisation of the production side, so all the projects, the shoots, and the footage that we've got, and all the kind of video output. It kind of stems from me. And then all the kind of archive footage as well, which feeds in. Something I was kind of talking about to Kim before was we work with pillars, and it's basically we've thought up 4 pillars that we work to. One is team, one is matches, one is nostalgia, and one is people. And by people, I mean supporters and the people around the community, the town of Motherwell. And we make sure that everything we do, content-wise, fits into one of these 4 pillars. And it keeps us on track, because you can get sidetracked sometimes by whatever the latest fad is or what's going viral just now and trying to replicate it, or getting involved in conversations that aren't really to do with the club itself. So we try and keep everything focused to these 4 pillars. And that's where we kind of come in on a Monday and we do our planning meeting. We sort the week ahead, the month ahead even, and we make sure everything fits into those 4 pillars.
I love that. That's very inspirational. Did you come up with that, or how did you was there so much that you needed to sort of like find guiding lights basically?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that actually I did in my previous job at COP90, where we worked to pillars, and it was more so, as I say, this is an example of how much more staff you get in our jobs in London, is my job was purely to work in one of those pillars, whereas now I work across the 4. But when I came into the club, we took it as a chance to rebuild the media department. At that point, we didn't have Scott, who came in on a voluntary basis when I started, because I was looking for another camera operator. So at that point, there was only 3 of us. And we took it as a chance to strip everything back and work out what exactly we stood for and represented as a football club, and then how we could replicate that and reflect that in the media department. So we stripped it all bare and asked, right, what is Motherwell Football Club? What are the club's aims? What do we exist for? Why do we exist? Who are our target audience? And we worked it all out based on that, how our output could then reflect that, which is why we then went on to do things like, it could be things like the interviews we do with players, we get them to look straight into the camera when they're talking to us, rather than like news style where it's side on talking to an interviewer. And the reason for that is we want them to talk to the supporter. We want the fan to watch it and feel like they are engaging with the player at that point, rather than just sitting watching an interview. Another aspect was we introduced the Inside Motherwell documentary, which grew over time to basically be more in-depth features, which can be with people all around the club, different roles. The main idea with the players is because we wanted to heavily brand the players, and this stems back to why the club, what the club actually exists for. No one is under any illusions that Motherwell's not a big club on the grand scale of things. We are a stepping stone for players a lot of the time. So we will produce young players, or we will bring in players that maybe have lost their way or are not big names. And if they do well here, they can go on to bigger and better things, be it in Scotland or down south or abroad, anything. We have obviously a track record of this, and we push this message to players when we want to sign them. So we reflect that in what we do in the media. So what we do is we kind of break down privately, internally, which players have potential to either push on themselves, get a big move, push on themselves, get an international call-up, or get a move that might make the club money, like a transfer fee. And we think, right, okay, how can we brand these players? And we sit down with the boys. I'll sit down one-to-one with them, just have a chat. It's not like an interview or anything like that. And just ask them quite like candidly, what are your aims? Where do you want to go in your career? What do you think the fans think of you? What are your like pros and cons in terms of your ability and your personality? And we kind of work with them and go, okay, so you, for example, a player might say, the fans like me because I'm a good defender, but they don't think I'm very good on the ball, like technically. So we'll go, okay, how do we address that then? How do we could show more clips of you in training to show the technical side of things. We can push that a wee bit more. Or Yeah, so it's little examples like that, and we try and brand the player so that the conversation changes and it's about the positives, because we always kind of tell the players, like, we don't have we are fighting a lot with the coverage of Celtic and Rangers in Scottish football. So when journalists come to our games, or when the TV cameras at our games, quite a lot of time it's when we're playing Celtic or Rangers, and quite a lot of time that's when we don't win the games. So a lot of the people who are building a reputation for our players are actually the ones that don't see them at their best and don't see their best games week in, week out. And they don't know them in terms of personalities or characters off the pitch. So it's on us as a club, and it's on the players as individuals to showcase their best qualities, to change that narrative and make people aware of what they are capable of. One example of that is when Declan Gallagher came into the club. He was in prison previously. He had this reputation on his back, and we thought, right, well, we can't change that. We can't change the past, but the club have given him a chance to push on with his career. How do we work with that? So we just had to work with him to try and change that narrative so that people weren't talking about him in his past, and they were talking about him right now. And he had a really good season with us when he first joined, and we showcased that. We showcased his ability, and it can be as simple as putting out stats or highlights reels or anything. And we interviews and things that were changing the narrative away from the past and looking at the future. And I'm by no means saying that we are personally responsible for this, but as a collective, from the way that we all as a club, and him as an individual as well, as a result, not as a result, but you know what I mean, eventually he got a Scotland call up and he played for his country. And we believe a big part of that is because people moved on from the past, and they talked about him as a current player and not what he did previously. So it's all part of, we need to be a part of this, and it's getting that message across to players of, you're so responsible for how you are seen in the media, but we can play our part, and if we work together, we can get the right message out there.
Laura, that is fascinating. I saw Andrew has a question.
Yep.
Are you happy to take a question?
Yeah. I was just, what are your 4 pillars again?
Yeah, so the first one's match. So it's everything that revolves around a match day, be it the build-up, so that could be like a press conference the day before a game, anything we do on the day of the game, or anything in the days after, which is just maybe taking goals, clips, or anything at all that is stemming from the game. Team is the other one, so that's anything that the player content falls into, and that can be the fun stuff or the serious stuff. There's nostalgia, which I will hold my hands up, we're not as strong on this one, because we put all our efforts into the other 3 pillars, we've kind of slacked off slightly on this one, but it's anything that looks back on previous players or celebrates things that happened on this day 15 years ago. It can be something simple, like this day 3 years ago, we beat Livy 2-1, and the fans will, you put the goals out and the fans will start sharing their memories from it and be like, oh, that was a great goal, that was a great away day, and that sort of thing. And the other one is people, and that is the people around the town and the culture, the community around the town and the supporters. We try and do a lot of work to promote the good work done around the town, but also highlight some of the bad things that can be improved on. For example, we did a video on food banks a couple of weeks back, and it's just such a prevalent problem in Motherwell. We can't ignore that. We'd love it to be different, but instead of just saying this is a bad thing, we've showed how the club and how the people can help. So we ran a food bank collection at one of our games, and then we got one of our players to go along to the food bank to see how it all works, how the setup was. And that was one of the videos where we had a chance. This is an example of kind of thinking outside the box of how to tell a story, because it would have been very easy for us to just go to the food bank and interview the volunteer that runs the food bank and ask them what happens, what do you do, all the facts. But we thought, that's fine, but who's going to pay as much attention to that is if our star striker was telling the story instead. And so one of our main players, Tony Watt, he is quite involved with the community. It's something he actually enjoys and feels quite strongly about. So we asked him, would you like to take part in this? Would you like to go along and learn a bit more? And he was all for it. So we went along, spoke to the guy who was in charge, and we filmed this conversation. Now this conversation, we said to him, like, chat for 5-10 minutes, learn a wee bit about it. And then what we'll do is we'll sit you down and we'll interview you and ask what you've learned. And you can tell us the story. He was talking to her 45 minutes and he wouldn't shut up talking to him. He just found it so interesting. That was just him being himself personally. He learned so much from the experience, which in turn meant he could pass on the message, we could learn from it. And the video ended up going down really well because fans listen to players, and it's just they will, it's eye-catching. So they'll see that on their timeline. They'll see, right, Tony Watt sitting talking about food banks, right? Okay, why is he doing that? And they'll actually watch it, and it'll generate more interest, more understanding, and in turn, more people might end up going, well, I'm going to donate as well to food banks. So everyone benefits from it.
I mean, I just get goosebumps or just listening to you, because do you know what? I'm just very conscious and present right now to the fact that it's an amazing blend and very authentic blend of branded content and storytelling. So you come to film school or you come to college studying film and stuff, and you think, like I certainly did, I would be Spielberg. And then you discover all of this, especially as technology evolves and, you know, like the world opens up and all sorts of jobs just pop up, you know, and materialize. And you're like, actually, there's so many things, so many avenues that you can explore, and so many you could, yeah. And so following your passion, I just love. And also, as you say, telling a story, even if you end up doing branded content, actually the only way that you can engage a community with branded content, making them care, is by telling them a story. Yeah. By telling them a story, they relate, and they connect, and they can just get engaged. I just love that. That's amazing. And what I always find talking to people, I have absolutely no interest in football. The only time I have interest in football is because my husband is Colombian. So when we watch a Colombian match, he just gets really excited, so I get excited. But that's the only time. But you know what I find is that when I listen to someone who talks with passion about anything, I just get engaged. Like, you know, you just told me a story about a star striker going to address a problem that's in the community, and I find that fascinating. I just think, yeah, that's how you change the story, the narrative around the community, and ending the two. So I don't know what else to say, just kudos. That's amazing. Do I have a next question for you? Sorry, I just got like guys, do you have questions for Laura? I don't want to hog the space either. Graham, you seem pretty interested in football as well. If you have a question, let me know, or anyone else. What is the aspect of the job that you enjoy most right now? Like, where does your hat sing?
I think the kind of, I mean, it always stems back to I'm getting paid to watch football, and that will be always what I remember. Like, if I'm ever having a bad day, or I can't be bothered getting out of bed in the morning, or I'm exhausted, it's still really easy to get into it and get involved, because at the end of the day, I'm doing what I love to do. And it sounds quite cliched to say, oh, your club's a community club and it's like a family, but I kind of like how close and how tight it is here. When I worked at Celtic, it was night and day compared to working at Motherwell, because the players are at a different level of ego. And I was young at the time as well, so I was quite young and inexperienced, but there's a disconnect where you're at a club that's big and you don't feel as connected to everyone. But when you're at a club the size of Motherwell, we go to lunch and we can be talking to a player, the manager, the physio, the chef, like everyone just mucks in together, and it's nice that way. And it's nice to just be able to walk past one of the players and have a conversation and not feel like I'm only talking to you because I need to get something from it. I need an interview at the end of the day. There's just that sort of friendliness to it, which is what I would always kind of look for in a job in general. I've had office jobs, and even in the big offices, I'll always make sure that the kind of people around me are still friends and it's still enjoyable. Because see, if you're just going into a job to work 9 to 5 and tick boxes, you're not going to enjoy it and you're not going to get the most out of it. You're not going to push yourself on to be the best. We're constantly pushing ourselves on just because we're lucky because we've got access here. and we have people around us who are quite into what we do and understand what we do, and we are allowed to go places that maybe other clubs can't go, be it the dressing room or team meetings or even just the lunch hall to interact with other people. We are very lucky in terms of access, and that's just because people buy into our beliefs and they trust us. We can be walking about with a camera, and the players know that we're not going to put anything out that like puts them in a bad light. And we always kind of explain this when a new boy signs. I kind of joke with them and go, look, you'll see me around my camera in my hand. Be yourself. Don't feel like you have to change who you are. And we say that and they laugh and they go, okay, but we think it'll take a while. It'll take some time for them to believe that and trust us, which is fine, but they'll see it from everyone else. They see all the established players that have been here a while just acting like, yeah, she's got a camera in her hand. It's fine. And it's nice because there will be some things where they say things, you go, well, we can't put that out. And then we can filter it ourselves and they trust us in that sense. So it's nice to have that level of trust.
Absolutely. What was lockdown like for you, and how was the club affected, and what was to come back from that?
Yeah, so when lockdown hit, it was actually, so 2 weeks before lockdown officially started, we had a game on, it was a Friday night game, and we were in here ready to prep all week and everything, all set for the game. And then the night before, one of the English games got called off. And we started to worry because we were like, right, this isn't great. Because Scottish football tends to follow English the same way kind of Scottish politics tends to follow, especially during lockdown. We kind of replicated what they were doing, so we kind of got the idea of, right, this isn't great. And then sure enough, in the morning of the game, we kind of got phone calls and we're like, this game's going to go ahead. And we came in that day, and it's a day it will haunt me forever, because being around the club, the players hadn't come in yet, because obviously they come in at night time for the game. They were having a late start, and the dressing room had all been set up and ready to go, but it was in darkness and no fans, like no game, nothing. And we ended up leaving the ground about 6 o'clock that night, and the place was just in darkness, and it was a weird, eerie feeling of, we don't know what's going on here or when this is going to return. We came in the next couple of weeks, and we were kind of like just every day taking it as it goes, going, don't really know what's going to happen. Then lockdown hit. So we basically shut down for 3 months until the end of the season, because football stopped. The games weren't going on. Luckily for the media department, we had quite a lot of work to do in terms of just the end of the season. I personally do a lot of I did like a roundup video of all the games. So it was the season we were doing really well. So we were third in the table going for Europe. And at that point, we didn't know if the league was going to resume, and we were going to have to play the last few games to fight for that third place, or if they were going to call the league and we were going to get awarded third place. We didn't know at this stage. So I'm trying to kind of prep all the end of season videos, all the kind of games so far and everything like that. So I was quite busy with that. I had things like, we do a kind of a fun behind the scenes outtakes video at the end of the season as well, which takes quite a bit of planning. So there was a lot of work that I would be doing for the end of the season anyway, that I could do from home. So I was working on that. It kept everyone busy. And then when it got called, obviously we had to kind of celebrate our league position at that point. So we had videos to prep for that as well and celebrate. And then we were very, very, very lucky, because after the summer break, we all came back in. And at that point, not many people were working from their office. So we were very, very lucky, because even during lockdown, even during the travel ban, we were getting special dispensation from the SFA to travel to away games. Obviously things were strict. We still are getting tested on a weekly basis. There's a lot of rules. Obviously things have relaxed and then picked up again, depending on what it's like in society. But at the time it was very strict. You had to sit socially distant in the lunch hall. You had to wear masks all around the club, indoors and outdoors. So things were a wee bit different. There's a kind of documentary style feature I did at the end of last season, that we sat all the players down and asked them, what was your experiences like in COVID season? So we asked every player the same questions, and we cut it all up, and it was basically them telling us the story of the season, right from that day that the game got called off, all through their kind of fears of, well, they had to train at home, they had to exercise at home, not knowing when they could get back in the club, not knowing if they had to stay fit again for the season starting up, or if that was them until the summer. They had to keep going out runs themselves, which isn't fun for anyone, never mind footballers who are used to being as a group and a squad. So it's like a 20-minute feature we did of them telling us the story, and everyone basically agreed it was the worst season ever. No one enjoyed it. We had no fans for an entire season, and it is the worst thing ever because the atmosphere is obviously dead. Everything's flat. It's very haunting. So when we had fans back for the first game this season, it was only about 2,000 we had in. So in context, that's not a lot, and it looked like not a lot because everyone was just spaced out, socially distant. But see the noise that day, I could have cried. Honestly, like everyone was quite emotional just standing like by watching it all, and it helped that it was a very dramatic game. We came from behind, we won 3-2, but it almost felt poetic in the end that we got that kind of victory in the end, because just having the fans there, and it was a dream for us because we obviously want to have cameras on supporters. We want to get all the emotions. We want to capture the frustration when we lose goals. We want to capture the joy and the songs and the singing and then the celebrations when we do score goals. So for us to be able to have cameras out capturing all the fans again, it was brilliant. And I never ever want to go back to last season again.
Oh, and hopefully we never have to. So on a match day, on a typical match day, how many cameras do you have around the pitch, and how many sort of operators do you have?
Yeah, so on a match day we have, I say 2.5 cameras. So we have 2 set cameras. One is we call match cam. So Scott films the matches and he films all the action, and he'll be responsible for getting the goals primarily. My role is we call it Playercam. And I go in a much longer lens. So my lens is a 600 and I go tight on the players, and I basically focus on each player in our team 2 or 3 times over the course of the 90 minutes, and I'll film them. I'll just follow them around, whether they're on the ball or not, tights and wides and various things. So sometimes they'll be on the ball, sometimes they won't. And that just provides us with a bit of colour and a bit of more artistic footage to go with the basic match action. And then on another camera, we'll either have, we call it the roaming camera. So we either stick it on the fans if it's a good crowd, or if it's a heated atmosphere, or like the game's a bit unpredictable. Or what we've started doing recently is lock it on the goalkeeper, because if maybe the opposition have a lot of chances, our goalkeeper is very good. So he is very good at pulling off good saves. So if we've got a camera on him, then the more chances he has of saving them, then the more chance we have of getting good footage of it. So we're quite flexible on the third camera. In terms of the actual like technical side of things, it's Sony Cameras we use. So we have a 300 lens on the match cam and a 600 in Playercam, and we vary between a short lens, which is 70 to 125, or we use a 200 lens for the roaming cam. We film on the pitch at full time, and we'll go handheld for that. So me and Scott will go on at full time handheld with the short lens, and then Ali will be sometimes maybe around the tunnel area or the edge of the pitch, and he's got a Ronin that he uses, and we've started putting a prime lens on that camera as well, just to kind of give a wee bit more of an artistic look to it. We would love to do it with all the cameras, we just don't have 3 prime lenses. So we thought, well, we'll try it with one anyway, because it'll give that sort of depth of field and artistic look with the aperture going in our favour. So yeah, I'm just seeing the other questions there.
What would your top tips be for students who want to work in sport media and production?
Yeah, okay. Hold on. I just because I saw that one there, there was technical issues like interviewing outside. I think that's quite a good question. We do all our interviews, well, most of our interviews in the stand, and part of that is to bring the players closer to the fans, because they're in their area on a kind of on the week, the day-to-day part of the week, but also because again we're a small club and we don't have a lot of space indoors. We don't have a studio, we don't have fancy studios, so it's a bit of both, but that comes with its problems, because anyone who knows Fir Park, it's a very noisy area, and it's also something you don't even realise until you're trying to do an interview. So we've got a school right next to the stadium. So guaranteed, no matter what time of day it is, the kids seem to have a break and all you hear is screaming and bells ringing. We have birds that nest places that you didn't even know existed, and are doing some sort of mating call or territorial arguments with each other. We also have, the stadium's also on a flight path, which you might not notice until you really need quietness. And there's always a plane going past, or there's a lot of sirens going by. There's a lot of emergencies around this area, apparently. So yeah, you've got to just persevere with these things. Time your interviews, so work around it. Time it when the schools aren't out. If a plane's passing, you just have to ask the person that's talking to stop, and you might have to just ask the question again and explain why. They'll understand. And that's something that I didn't have a lot of confidence doing when I first started out. I would just be like, oh, I'll just roll with it. It'll be fine. It's not fine. Take a pair of headphones with you. But you'll find it's not fine. So if you're ever worried about audio, just ask the question again. Text an alternative route, that would be helpful. And another big part of it is actually just communication. Sometimes we'll go out in the stadium and there'll be people working in the stands, like just like fixing the stand, or the groundsman will be out mowing the grass. So a bit of communication with them just to say, look, we're going to do an interview at such and such a time. It'll be 5-10 minutes. Can you hold off what you're doing? Doesn't piss them off. It keeps them on your side, and so it'll work. So things like that, just kind of think, if you break down everything that's going to go wrong and try and work around it in advance, it tends to help you. So that's my advice there. In terms of tips of getting into the industry, I've got quite a few of these. If it's Scottish football, I would say contacts and work experience are your two most invaluable skills to kind of pursue. It might be the case with other industries. I just don't know. I just don't have that experience to say, but I imagine it's probably quite similar. In Scottish football especially, it's a small world. Everyone knows everyone. And if they don't know everyone, then they're sure as hell stalking you on social media, which is my next point is, don't say anything on social media that you don't want to come back and haunt you in the future. So if you're seriously looking for a job in a certain field, go back, delete old posts from when you were younger, from when you were drunk, from when you were a wee bit more immature, get rid of them all, and like be aware. Like, see if you contact somebody, the first thing they'll do is search for you on social media. They might not admit it, but everyone's doing it because they want to gauge what you're like. They'll gauge everything based on what your profile picture is, what your bio says, what the tone of your tweets or your posts. They'll just try and gauge what you're like as a person based on your social media platform.
It comes back to that trust, right? I mean,
yeah,
you want to work with someone that, you know, and especially in the public function, I guess, like, you know, when you're responsible for somebody's public image, you want to make sure that, you know, yeah, you can trust that person.
Yes, definitely. Contacts, get yourself out there, get your name known, contact people, ask if you can shadow them, ask if you can provide any help. Look, no one likes doing unpaid work, but sometimes it's the way in. We always try and not say, look, we'll give you unpaid work. We'll try and say, like, look, we'll pay expenses or something at least, even if it's a small budget. We don't like asking for unpaid work, but as somebody's been there themselves, it's such an important bit to have the motivation to be able to go out there and work for free. Says a lot about you as a person, and you will learn a lot. You'll find that a company, unfortunately, is more willing to give you a chance if it's for free, because they don't feel responsible for you. They won't be analysing you to death to say, right, well, you don't deserve this pay, so we're going to bin you after one day, sort of thing. That you'll get more patience if you're working for free. Just get yourself out there, get out practicing your skills, and have evidence of your skills on show. So I've got a couple of examples. A girl messaged me a few months back, it might have been during lockdown, where she took photos for St Johnstone's women's team, but she wanted to try and get into the first team, but she wasn't really getting the opportunity. And she was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, like, where do I go from here? So I was saying to her, I was like, well, don't be restricted to just St Johnstone. You're not hired by St Johnstone. You don't owe them your entire career. So ask around, try other football clubs and try and get in there. Start up an Instagram page or a Twitter account, take photos. It doesn't even have to be about football. It can be go out on a Saturday afternoon and take some nice pictures anywhere. If you're showcasing your work, you've got something to show for yourself. So when you do contact people in the industry for advice or for opportunities, they've got something to look at and go, yeah, you've got potential there. You're keen. Try and get your, like, take it on yourself to start things as well. I mean, when I was at uni, like, it wasn't successful at all, but it was a group of friends, there was 4 or 5 of us. We knew we wanted to work in football, and we thought, right, well, let's start a magazine. So we started a magazine in our spare time. This was, I mean, like, if we'd done it nowadays, it might have been a lot easier with online and social media, but it wasn't. We were very, very basic in what we were doing, but what we actually did helped us personally, although we didn't have a big impact on the industry, because we were getting out and about to press conferences, or we were contacting clubs asking like if we could get interviews with footballers. So even small things like that, even if people didn't read the final product, we'd got experience in learning who to contact at clubs, speaking to these people in the industry. A big part, like, say, for example, it can be something small, like if you want to cover games and you're not quite sure how you want to cover them, be it writing match reports or taking photos or whatever, ask the club if you can get a press pass for a game. We very, very rarely turn away people who come along and just go, like, we're freelance or we're a student, we want to learn. See, unless it's a big game and the press box is full, we're very rarely going to turn people away. Come in, get the experience, and it can be something as silly as learning where the press box is and learning how to get from the front door to the press box. That gives you that confidence in the future to say, well, I know my way around. I belong in this industry because I know what I'm doing and where I'm going. And then you meet people that way. You meet other journalists, and as I say, it's a small world. You'll start seeing the same journalists week in, week out, and they'll get to know your face as well. You don't have to ask questions straight away. Like in a press conference after a game, it's very rushed. It's not very rigid at all. The manager will come in, it'll be a huddle. People will just stick their phones in or their dictaphones in, and they'll ask questions. You don't have to ask a question straight away if you don't feel confident. Just be there, watch what happens. You can build up over time. And then it can be like you learn about embargoes as well. So sometimes everyone goes all in, and there'll be maybe, it's like as a student, it might be quite daunting because you'll be like, oh, nobody speaks about it because everyone just knows, like, because they're there every week. But just ask. And like, sometimes somebody will turn around and notice that you're a new face and go, like, just to let you know, the first 4 questions is good to go now, but the rest is held until Sunday morning. And that little bit of communication with people that are there, the other journalists, can help you massively, because again, it shows if you ask a question, you know what you're doing, and they'll learn your face and stuff. There was a guy that he was a student, I can't remember what college he was at, but his name's Ben Banks. You'll probably maybe seen him on Twitter. He was a student, and he did the same. He came to Motherwell games and press conferences, just as a student, voluntarily. He started his kind of place. I don't know if he started it or if he took control of it, but it was a website called Not the Old Firm, and he started writing articles about clubs that weren't the Old Firm teams by covering their press conferences and maybe asking, like, eventually once we kind of learn who he was and we saw him quite often, he would ask for interviews, and we were like, yeah, sure, why not? You're getting our name out there, you're publicising the club, so what's the problem? And I know that he's then recruited more students to do similar. There's one boy, Ewan, who writes for this website, and he started now helping out with our women's coverage, writing match reports. And that might not seem like a lot, but it's a foot in the door for him. He's now making contacts in the industry. We know who he is, and he will then take the confidence from that to go on and be like, well, I've done that, and now I can do this for somebody else. The other example is Scott, who works with us now. Scott was a student at UWS. When I came in as a camera operator, I said, I need a second camera operator, just another volunteer like me who comes in on a match day. I was a wee bit of an anomaly because I had more experience and I had a different reason for working my Saturday afternoons here, but I knew that some students would want the chance. So I asked around. I knew one of the lecturers at the college, and she said, I've got a Motherwell fan in the class. He'd love to get involved. So I was like, great, get him along. And Scott was awful at first. Scott will be the first to admit he was terrible when he started. And he got flung in at the deep end. We didn't have time to kind of say, I go to the women's games and practice, and it doesn't really matter if you mess up. We put him into first team games, and he would miss goals. He would forget to press record. He'd be moving about, like we used to always like joke saying it was a crouchy, because he'd be moving a camera around like the robot. And we'd come in and watch the food chapters, and I'd be like, Scott, this is terrible. And the amount of times I'd be like, we need to bin him, but it's not good enough. But he learned every week. We would tell him what he was doing wrong, and he picked it up, and he learned the hard way by getting thrown in the deep end, to the point where we couldn't get rid of him because he became invaluable to us. He knew how we worked. He knew what we wanted, and he was learning all the time, to the point where we managed to get the budget for a part-time intern role. So we came in 2.5 days last season, and then this year we managed to find the budget to make it a permanent position. And this is just somebody who came in on a voluntary basis and wasn't good at the start, and it just shows that you can improve and you can get there in the end.
How amazing. I love that he messed up so much, but then he still became invaluable. Because I mean, it's part skill, but it's also, you know, every place works differently and has different processes, a different vibe, and it's as much about the particular place as it is about your skill. Sorry. So, Kim has a question as well. We have some prime lenses, Laura, and volunteers. We can come along and get some creative shots for you and edit them.
Yeah. See if someone wants to come along. Like, see, even if it's as simple as want to like kind of film around the stadium or something and practice different ways of shooting. Yeah, get in touch with me. Like I've been honest from the start, we don't have a lot of time to teach a lot of people some things. So it's like things like placements and work experiences is quite difficult at a club of our size and a team of our size when we're so like up against deadlines and things on a regular basis. But see if you want to come in and try something out. Of course, like drop me an email, drop me a message, and we'll sort something out.
I mean, how Kim is celebrating. And thank you so much to Kim for finding you and for, you know, making a connection with you. This is absolutely fabulous. Just my world has expanded as well. Unless anyone else has any other questions, I think Laura, you've been absolutely fabulous. So much for your time. Oh, thank you. Everyone's saying thank you. Fred, can I hijack this post as well? I have a student that I've been keen to speak to.
Of course. Yes, of course. Anything, any questions or advice or anything at all, opportunities, yes. As I say, like we don't have a lot of time to be personal, hands-on teachers in that sense, but if there's anything we can help with, whether it's just access to the stadium one day to do a bit of filming, or come to a game like or a press conference to shadow, or to just kind of watch from afar, definitely get in touch. Everyone here has been in your position, and we know what it's like to be students and trying to get into the industry. So we're never going to close the door on you guys, because you've got to start somewhere.
I mean, and that's so invaluable. That's absolutely amazing. Where can we follow you, Laura? So all the Motherwell FCs.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to follow Motherwell and the work we do on all platforms, so Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. TikTok's one that's strangely taken off, but we're still experimenting with it. It's going well. We're getting some crazy views on some posts and then nothing on others. So it's a fun experiment right now. So yeah, follow the club and see. In terms of myself, I'm on Twitter. I can put it into the group if you want. I'll write my
thank you.
Username. I tend to only talk about football on Twitter, so if you are into that, you can follow me there. If not, then you won't get much out of me unless it's sharing dog photos or dogs at football, which is what I do quite often.
Oh, wow. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Laura. I'm sure we'll speak to
Thank
you
you.
again.
Thank you so much for having me. And I really hope that somebody somewhere has taken something from that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you next week. And yeah, go follow Motherwell FC. Thank you so much. Have a good Tuesday, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.